Kingston Town can't win.
Bone Crusher at Our Waverley Star, stride for stride.
Cometh the hour, cometh the legend, Winks has done it!
So we're joined by New Zealand racing royalty here, Hall of Famers Dave and Lance O'Sullivan. Guys, thanks for your time.
Pleasure, thanks for having us.
Pleased to have you here.
And we'll get into it. How did it all begin? Has racing always been in the family?
Oh, when I actually started, I started off as a jockey, and I rode until I was 27, and then I shifted to Matamata and started to train. Why the hell I did that, I'll never know.
Lance, we'll go to you now. What was it like to ride on Cox Plate Day at the Valley?
Look, I think I had 6 or 7 rides altogether in the Cox Plate, and it was one of those races. You know, as you're well aware, when you go through, come out on the horse onto the track through the tunnel, and the trumpets are going, and they're playing that sort of, it's almost like you feel like you're a gladiator going to war, and that's the best way to explain going out and competing in a Cox Plate. And as you know, it is one of those races where, you know, the tracks and the horses are very close to the crowd, and it just all adds to the atmosphere. But it's it's one of those races where there's not a lot of chatter behind the gates. It's all on, and everybody's very, very serious.
Just stepping away from the Cox Plate for a moment, Dave and your son Paul, you're the only 2 New Zealand trainers to have ever trained a winner in the Japan Cup. That came with Horlicks in 1989.
Yep.
What are your great memories from that performance, and obviously the remarkable performance he put in that day? Sorry.
It was. We were up in the stand, which was most probably a good 100 yards before the winning post. So I had to ask the guys behind me whether she held on or not. She was a real tough mare, and because I took Waverley Star, he went over there about 2 years before that, or 3 years before that, and he ran 5th in it. But he didn't. He was never the stayer that she was. She was just tough.
And was it correct that she was aimed to ride in the Cox Plate that year, but something had happened and she didn't actually make it to the track?
Yeah, that's right. It was the day before. I was just had her picking outside the stable, and the hair on her neck started to stand up, which was most unusual. And so I took her back to the stable, took a temperature, and she had a temp, so I scratched her. But she got over it virtually. She was next day still not, it was okay, but I wouldn't take the risk with her, so we naturally enough left her out. But then she ran in the McKinnon and won that. And then she went from there to the Japan Cup and won that.
It's safe to say she would have you would have been very confident with her if she were to run on Cox Plate Day that she would have won that day? Very,
yeah. She was in such great form, which she proved the following week and in the Japan Cup. But I was pretty confident.
And both of you have made the transition from jockey to trainer. It is the natural progression, but I guess what did you learn from doing that? Obviously, you need a certain skill set to do both.
Well, I always found it far more rewarding, far more difficult in every way to be a horse trainer against being a jockey. I mean, you ride a horse in a race and you get off it, and if you're unlucky, you're unlucky, but that's it, finish on for the next. But when you're training, you've got to take them home and hose them down and clean them all up and figure out where you're going to go next time. A lot of work.
And Lance, for yourself, how have you found having more involvement with the horses as opposed to just riding?
Well, I think it's as Pa said, it's far more difficult, but I think it's more satisfying. But I've become extremely critical of jockeys over the years because, at the end of the day, they get off and hand the horse back to you, and it's you've got to explain to the owner what went wrong. But when you do win, the wins, especially you win a good race, there's no thrill like it. It's a great thrill when you're on their backs, but as a trainer, there's so much more goes into it. There's so many more people that are involved, from your vet to the farrier to the stable hands, and there's just, weeks, months of planning goes into winning a big race. So I suppose we've learnt over the years, when we do have our big wins, we do enjoy them more, but it's far more difficult. The headaches are enormous. You can have every day you wake up, and unfortunately the job as a horse trainer in New Zealand, we continue to have to deliver bad news to owners every day. It's some poor owner you've got to talk to where something's gone amiss, but that's why the great times are so great.
Now, a lot of stories have been told that most people would know about you two, but is there any stories that hasn't been, untold stories between you two, working so closely together over those years that have never heard the light of day, or something you can share of it, a story that you two have every time together, working together?
I'd have to be very careful answering something like that. Oh no, it all started as we are a family, and Paul came in partnership with me when he turned 21, and Lance started riding work about 14.
About 14, correct.
And so it was just a natural thing that carried on.
The one story that I can add is, I remember there was one year it was over the Auckland Carnival, and it was a Derby meeting one day, and I think I might have ridden 6 of the 10 winners, and I think you trained 5 of them, and you had 6 runners that day, and all Dad could talk about on the way home was the 6th one that actually got beat, run 4th, and I can recall that. So he was pretty tough to ride for, but of course, you had to perform. We had a very good line of horses, and they were expected to win, and often they did, but yeah, I can recall one other year I was leading jockey, and I did get a month stand down from riding the team, which you probably can't recall, but yeah, that was, so it was pretty harsh.
What did you get that for?
Obviously slaughtering some horse along the way.
And you quickly touched on Paul then. I believe his tenure in Hong Kong has come to an end.
Yeah.
Is he going to be coming back and the band getting back together?
He's coming back. He's going to live with me, and for a while anyway, till he makes up his mind what he wants to do. But no, it'll be very interesting to see what he does when he comes back. I can't see him training horses, can you?
Oh, there's no chance of that. But in fact, when Paul left to go to Hong Kong, at that stage, I had no intention of becoming involved in training horses. I was doing a little bit of work for a local racing channel. I wasn't much good at it, but I did that for about 12 months. And then when Paul got the nod to go to Hong Kong, it was either wind the whole operation down or somebody take it over. And it turned out that I drew the short straw, and sort of 18 years later, here I am. But when he made the decision to come back to New Zealand, which was quite some time ago, it's nothing, I would say probably the last 2 years, he's debated whether it was going to be his last, but he finally called time on it this year. And I also offered him, the position back as a trainer at Wexford, but he said no, he's done his time as a trainer, but he's happy to fill in when Andrew Scott and I both go on holidays, so that will be his involvement.
The Cox Plate, 1991 Cox Plate, we'll start there with Surfers Paradise, a 5-time Group 1 winner, with probably the pinnacle moment in his career being the Cox Plate in 1991. What can you tell us about him as a horse? Did he ever reach his full potential, or do you think he had some more in him?
He finished up in America, that horse, but prior to that, there's a bit of a story attached to him. I was asked to go and have a look at this horse there was, I think, 4 Chinamen and Jim Smith. It was quite a funny selection of names, but anyway, I went and had a look at him in the paddock, and he was the worst looking horse there, but turned out he was a real mighty horse. He was a great galloper. Here he won the 2,000 guineas in the Derby and everything else. The big weight for age race at Easter too. So he was a very, very good horse. Then he won the Rosehill Guineas, and then he came back and he won the Cox Plate. good tough horse. That day in the Cox Plate, the field was very cramped up, turning for home. He was nearly last, if not last. And he just put in a withering run to get up and win quite well in the finish.
And his name, how did he get his name?
I don't know, you'd have to ask the Chinaman about that one.
Lance, you obviously on that day, did everything pan out from start to finish how you thought it might, or was it still too much work?
Look, in a race like that, it was hard to make any sort of plan. I think he might have drawn out a bit, and it was just, concentrating on getting in on the first corner. As far as him getting his name, is by Crested Waves, so Surface Paradise. I think that may have had something to do with the naming of the horse. But he was. I think he was at quite long odds that day. It might have been sort of 18-1, but he was a horse who really mixed his form. And when you go back through his history, he always failed on a wet track. And I think the start prior to the Cox Plate, I got a feeling he only beat one home here in New Zealand.
Yeah, that was at Ellerslie, yeah.
On a wet track, and then he went across, but he wasn't a very big horse, but he took an enormous stride, and you only had to spit on the track, and he was sort of all at sea in the conditions. But every time he got on top of a track that was firm underneath, he was hard to beat. He also liked his races spaced a little bit, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
But he's probably, of the horses that I rode and probably you trained, he was probably the most underrated horse. When you go back, you look at his performance, and he really was an exceptional racehorse.
And he beat some good horses that day too, didn't he? Like Superimpose,
Yeah.
Kinjite, Rough Habit. He beat some quality horses.
They were good horses, and he didn't just beat them. He was sort of they, as Dad said, they were sort of started to bunch on the corner, and he was probably only about 3 or 4 lengths off them, and he was able to come to the outside, get on the back of Superimpose, and he really swamped the last bit. He won very comfortably, and they were a good line-up, and he went lined up the McKinnon Stakes sort of 9 days later. We went out favourite on that occasion and really disappointed, but the race was probably a little bit too close. And
just how special was it to have the three of you winning the Cox Plate together that day in 1991?
Look, for myself personally, I know prior to this, the stable had 3 seconds and a third. I'd been involved in 2 of the seconds and a third. So you could say it was unfinished business, but it was just such a thrill to win it. And, of course, we didn't mind waiting a couple more years. I think it was worth a little bit more money in 1991. But, I think it was just, I think from my own personal view, and also my brother Paul, we were both thrilled for my father, who'd been doing it out there trying to win the race long before we came along. So it gave us a lot of satisfaction.
Yeah, that's good. I think the first runner I had was in about 1975. It was a horse called Upik, and he won the Sydney Cup later the following year. A very good horse, was striking wet tracks in Melbourne that year, and but the Cox Plate then was just another race. I think it wasn't recognised as it is now. I mean, it is the race in Australia to win. In those days, it wasn't. But he didn't. He only won a fair race, but he was a very good horse, but just didn't handle the tracks there that we got that year.
And obviously, before all of that, we had in 1986 the race of the century. When you look back on that day, what was it like to be involved in obviously that such a famous race and the build up to that race back in 1986?
Yeah, well, all it does really brings lumps to your throat, doesn't it, a race like that? But it was a crazy race. I think 2 jockeys would never have done that again. They didn't do the wrong thing, but it was a pretty brave move to do what they did do. It left a lump in your throat, that race. I know it was pretty... I was pleased for Frank because he had been under a lot of pressure, and I was pleased for him, but also disappointed for us. But never mind, that's the way it goes.
And just some of the involvement of the Cox Plate, you said since 1975. We're told McEwen was a big reason for the race changing and becoming what it is today. What are some of the other contributing factors to that?
With Ian,
Yeah, with
the next horse I took over there after Upik was a horse called Chivalry, and he ran second to what was the name of that horse he ran? Dulcify.
Yeah.
Ran second to Dulcify, but on that day nothing would have beaten Dulcify. He won by 5 or 6 lengths. So, but Ian, he did ring me. I was staying out at Epsom, and he rang me to say to bring him in and let him have a gallop on the track. And I wouldn't, because he's such a delicate little horse. I thought I don't want to put him on a float and make it tough on him. That was a mistake, because I think any horse that's going to race in Moonee Valley wants to go there and have a gallop first. Let him have a look at the place. I didn't.
And just to touch on the race itself and what it's now become, the Cox Plate. I guess when you hear, the name or the race, the Cox Plate, what are your? We'll start, Lance, first with you. What are your thoughts? Like, what do you immediately think of when you hear of the Cox Plate?
Well, I think the Cox Plate is such an important race. There's the Golden Slipper Melbourne Cup Cox Plate, and every jockey wants to win one of those. And we were fortunate to win one, and probably, 3 races, very, very different race. I think the Cox Plate is it's the championship. It's the best racehorse. It's the weight for age championship of Australasia, and we can just see how important it is now, where the horses are coming from all around the world to compete in it. So it's just such a prestigious event, and we haven't had a runner in the race as a trainer, but there's never a year goes by where I'm not glued to the TV to watch.
David?
Yeah, I'd confirm that. It is the race in Australia. Apart from the Melbourne Cup will always be the race in Australia, and I think definitely the Cox Plate's the next. And it's just getting better and better. And no doubt as the money goes up, it will get better. So, but it's just a real thrilling race to be involved in.
Yep. And obviously New Zealand has had such a long affiliation with the Cox Plate, so many great champions. Is there any horses in the country this year you think you could single out as possible contenders?
Well, I must say I just don't study them like I used to. I'd be surprised if there was one.
I think there is one. The filly that ran second in the Oaks, and a filly by Vadamos. La Creek. La Creek. And, I understand that she's making her way to Melbourne, and I think she's outstanding. Well, she'll be a mare by the time she gets there. And if New Zealand have a chance of winning it, she's our best chance we've had for a very, very long time if they're heading that way. She's an outstanding filly, and if she gets here and if she can get there in the form that she showed this summer as a 3-year-old filly, look out.
Yeah. That's very exciting. I think that's all.
I think
that's all our questions. Dave and Lance, thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you very much.
Good luck for the rest of the season.
Our pleasure, boys.
Pleasure, guys.
Let's hope the Cox Plate keeps getting better.
Absolutely.
All ready to go. They're off. Great start too in the Cox Plate, and down on the inside, Stylish Century the first to jump out from Kinjatone, ready to explode. And towards the outside, Chortle is going very fast out there, as so is Shaftesbury Avenue, coming down towards the judges' box, and deeper on the track is Stargazer. Past the judges' box, a lap to go, and Chortle goes to the front by a length in advance of Stylish Century. They're followed by Kinjatone, that was crowding there. Royal Creation interfered with, and Shaftesbury Avenue got a slight check, and the field starts to string out down the side at the 1600. Chortle about 3 lengths to Stylish Century, a length and a half to Kinjatone on the inside of Stargazer. 4 lengths further back is Shaftesbury Avenue, a length into Rough Habit, moving up on the outside, and they were being closely followed then by Royal Creation, ready to explode. A length further back is Prince Celeria. He's over on the outside there, and he was followed by Dr. Grace. A length to Citizen, followed by Surfers Paradise, who's third last. Superimposes second last, and Lord Revenue last of all, about 20 lengths off the lead. Around the back, just over 1,000 to go, and the leader Chortle, 2.5 lengths to Stylish Century. Centenary 2 lengths away. Stargazer. Kinjataya's fourth. In behind them, Shaftesbury Avenue. A length and a half to Rough Habit. 2 lengths to Royal Creation on the outside of Ready to Explode. A length to Citizen, being followed by Prince Illyria. Dr. Grace in behind them. Citizen is dropping back a little bit on the outside, and Superimpose is starting to go around the next. A length and a half to Surface Paradise, second last, and Lord Revenue last of all. Down the school side, 650 to go, and Stylish Century has taken the lead. Here come the challengers. Shaftesbury Avenue taking off on the outside and winding his run, and so is Stargazer. Rough Habit moving up just behind them. Citizen into the picture with a good run. Ready to Explode is back behind them, and they're followed by Dr. Grace up towards the home turn. Rough Habit has dashed to the front now, and the Cox Plate rounding the turn. Rough Habit the leader. Citizen in hot pursuit. They're followed by Shaftesbury Avenue under pressure. Superimpose is finishing on well. Surface Paradise on the outside as they straighten up. Rough Habit headed by Citizen. 200 metres left to go. Citizen hit the front. Here comes Superimpose down the outside with a rattling run. And Surface Paradise is deeper on the track. Surface Paradise is swamping them. The New Zealander. Surface Paradise drawing clear. Surface Paradise has won. Superimpose second. Citizen third. Ready to Explode. Close up Prince Illyria. Royal Creation. They're followed by Dr. Grace. Rough Habit. Lord Revenue. Followed by Stylish Century and Kinjatae. Shaftesbury Avenue's finished a long, long way back with Stargazer, and last of all is Chortle.